MacFarland to talk about the Grange movement and the relocalization, how it works hand in hand.
I'm going to do a little presentation for you, and then we're going to ask some of our other California members to come up and just start a Q&A. So we thought that they could share, because they come from different subordinate Granges, community Granges around California, they can share their experience. So this is geared more towards Grangers. Are we all Grangers here tonight? That's okay. If you're not a Granger yet, you should think about becoming a Granger. Maybe you will after you hear this, maybe you run out the door, we'll see. What is a Granger? My friend Jen Saxon says a Granger is something one becomes. Becoming a Granger is not a right, it is a privilege. And membership carries with it certain responsibilities and expectations. After all, the Grange has been around for 146 years. And that's longer than my mother-in-law, which is no small accomplishment because her high school prom date was Calvin Coolidge. Through good times and bad, ups and downs, rain and shine, the Grange has survived. And God willing, it would survive all of us. And that's not such a morbid thought if we plant healthy seeds for the next generation to harvest. Being 146 years old, the Grange does not move too quickly. She's an old battleship, scarred from many conflicts and proudly flying the flags of many hard-fought victories. She turns slow and wide, but her lack of agility is made up for by her formidable mass and armament. She only needs a good captain and crew to navigate a proper course. But before we can know where we're going, we must know where we've been. We must not disrespect the generations of Grangers who came before us, or our rituals and heritage. Our rich history and traditions define us as Grangers. I often hear older Granges complain that younger members don't respect our Grange rituals. There may be some truth to that, but I encourage all of you to find ways to appreciate and practice Grange traditions, at least on occasion. You'll earn the admiration of those venerable Grangers that can help you realize that a Granger is something one becomes. During the divisive and destructive Civil War, farms were transformed into battlegrounds. And with cannon smoke still hanging over the once fertile fields and the soil damp with the blood of American sons and daughters, the founding fathers of the Grange first met. Rising from our fields and farmlands, we gathered on common ground to heal and support each other, work together, and speak with one voice. We built halls across the rural landscape of America, inviting family, friends, and neighbors to share the harvest and celebrate the bounty of life. And for more than 140 years, we preserved our founding principles. In essentials, unity. In non-essentials, liberty. In all things, charity. But our motto did not originate from the Grange. It first echoed in European churches in the early 17th century and was commonly known as the peace saying. It was a popular plea for an end to the 30 Years' War between Protestants and Catholics. In this context, our adopted motto is better understood. The beginning of the Grange in 1867 coincided with the beginning of the Reconstruction era following the Civil War. Our nation's leaders were calling for peace, forgiveness, and compassion to heal our wounds and bring us together. The purposes and goals of the Grange mirrored the populist sentiment of the time. Oliver Hudson Kelley, then an agent for the new Department of Agriculture, was assigned to travel through the South and report on farms and rural communities. Kelley witnessed firsthand the devastation and desperate conditions following the war. 1 out of 20 men had been killed or wounded. Many widows were left to tend the family farm with their young children. Recall the phrase from the Fourth Degree closing, "Let us be quiet, peaceful citizens, feeding the hungry, helping the fatherless and the widows." These matriarchal farm families were welcomed into the Grange, and for the first time, women received some measure of respect. And just as Congress was enacting laws giving voting rights to former black slaves, women were welcomed as voting members into the Grange. With the expansion of the Grange, battlefields were once again transformed into farmland. Farmers laid down their rifles and took up plows. The Grange brought farmers together to share common interests and promote the common good. The Grange organized farmers into one of the first collective bargaining groups and empowered them to negotiate more just and profitable agreements with railroads and suppliers, and influenced legislation. In 140 years, cities and townships have grown up around our rural town halls, and the Grange has evolved into much more than a community. The Grange has evolved into much more of a community service organization. Grange halls are often the center of their community, providing opportunities, cultural and education, entertainment, emergency shelter, a meeting place where new friends are made and old friends are cherished, and each Grange decides how to best serve its community. Nevertheless, our agricultural heritage still grounds us today. As our first degree work declares, agriculture is the first and noblest of all occupations. We have fewer farmers in the Grange today. Our focus as an organization supporting agriculture has expanded to include interests in how our crops are grown, where they come from, and how they find their way to our tables. The more disconnected we are from this cycle, the more likely we are depriving ourselves of the healthy sustenance we need, and the more that epidemic food-borne diseases will prevail. We want to reach into the classroom and educate students about healthier life choices. We're not just deciding what we're having for dinner tonight, we're asking what will our children feed their children. In these uncertain times of hardship and instability, of unreliable resources and a changing planet, how will we prepare for and provide for our children's future? Grangers have always been the tillers of the soil, the laborers of the day, the leaders of our communities, and the stewards of our future. Is this generation of Grangers prepared to carry on this legacy? We find ourselves on the threshold of a Grange Renaissance, a return to our roots, and a reaffirmation of our principles and purposes ordained by the founders more than 140 years ago. Across the country, farmers are rediscovering the Grange. These farmers are friends and neighbors facing significant challenges. While they work to feed us, sometimes they can barely feed themselves. These farmers need our help, and we must do everything possible to support them, encourage them, and learn from them. Thomas Jefferson said, "The only purpose of government is to serve the people." This same obligation applies to the leadership of the Grange at all levels. We are a grassroots organization. Our inspiration grows from the ground up. Our success is measured by the good work we do in our Grange halls and communities. Our pride does not radiate from a central authority, but springs from the collective efforts of dedicated and caring individuals. In 2009, the Grangers of California decided to go back to our roots. After years of spending $50,000 to $70,000, which amounted to 35% of all the dues we collected from our members, we were spending that amount of money to pay for an annual convention at a major hotel where only 2% of our members attended. But we decided to start holding our conventions in Grange halls. And in 2009, we actually ended up making $4,000 and had a record-setting attendance of 61% of our Granges. New leadership was elected that promised to exercise fiscal responsibility, provide accountability and transparency in our affairs, promote membership growth, and refocus the resources of the California State Grange to best serve our members and their communities. In the first year, we ended years of deficit spending. We repopulated 6 out of 10 vacant Granges and had our first net gain in membership in 30 years. By the second year, we had organized or reorganized 32 Granges and added 1,500 new members to our rolls. And as of today, we have organized or reorganized 39 Granges since 2009. This phenomenal growth is the end result of Grangers working together with a common belief in a Grange Renaissance. In California, we found that by adopting a progressive legislative agenda in support of sustainable agriculture, healthy communities, food sovereignty, and family farms, more and more people are rediscovering the Grange as a grassroots organization that shares their dreams. With the sale of so many family farms to corporations, a whole generation of sons and daughters of farmers have been deprived of their birthright. But still, farming is in their blood. These young people are discovering that the Grange offers opportunities and common ground they cannot find elsewhere. This year, we're kicking off our California State Grange School of Agriculture. The Ag School will be a dirt under the fingernails beginning farming experience on 5 acres of farmland in Central California, part of the 5,500-acre Golden Rule Ranch that was once the home of the famous racehorse Seabiscuit. And I toured this ranch, and they have somewhere secretly buried on the property Seabiscuit. But I have to tell you, I saw a couple of hooves sticking out of the soil. Following preparation, 2 instructors and 9 students will be in residence for the farming season. Our legislative efforts over the last few years have included bills supporting sustainable and organic agriculture, a ban on GE salmon or frankenfish, the legalization of industrial hemp, and the National Grange for 1 year actually had policy to support the legalization of industrial hemp. As a first-time delegate for California, I went back to the National Grange Convention that year, and they were hotly debating the legalization of industrial hemp. And this gal from New Hampshire had brought items made out of industrial hemp to share with everybody. She had lotions and candy bars and some clothing, and she had this pet bed made out of industrial hemp. And these guys were arguing back and forth, these old Southern conservative Grangers were getting up there and saying, well, if they legalize industrial hemp, my son's going to drop out of college, and stuff like that. So I rather nervously approached the microphone and said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm a first-time delegate from California, and being from California, I feel eminently qualified to speak on hemp. It just so happens that my wife and I have cats, and we have one of those pet beds made out of hemp. And being the curious fellow that I am, one night I got up and I rolled a little bit of it up and I smoked it. I didn't get high, but the next morning I had an incredible craving for a tuna sandwich. And they all laughed, and before they stopped laughing, they passed the doggone thing. And then they go, well, what did you just do? My son's dropping out of college now. Well, that lasted 1 year, and they rescinded it the following year when they came back to their senses. We are also in support of a ban on methyl iodide used by strawberry farmers, very, very harmful to the workers. Egg-laying hens in urban areas. Opposition of designating farm interns as employees. Do you know about that one? They're going, for generations and generations, people have gone to their local farms and said, look, I want to work on your farm with you, and in exchange for room and board, I'll work and I'll learn how to farm. Well, the government now has stepped in and said, oh, those people are employees. You got to pay work comp, you got to pay taxes, yada, yada, yada. It's ruining the whole system that's been around for generations. Limiting the use of antibiotics on livestock. Researching bee colony collapse and a ban on neonicotinoids. We're losing our bees, folks. There were articles just in last week's paper. They keep telling us, nah, they're just, tired. They go out and party at night. Yeah. The Homemade Food Act, which is, again, local food sovereignty acts, which are happening in counties and places all over the country. Herd shares. Driver's license for all. In California, it's a big problem. We have a lot of Latinos that work there. They are not legal citizens, but they do drive our roads. If they're going to drive our roads, whether they're legal or not, it's best that they're licensed and thereby insured. Just makes sense. GMO labeling, Proposition 37. The Grange was very much involved in that. We're going to have a little more from Jessica in a while on that. We collected almost 1 million signatures to get it on the ballot, and it lost by just a few percentage points. Transition to Organics Act. I think I heard Kari talk about that a little bit. In other words, conventional farmers that want to transition into organic farming. Water quality. Farmers' Bill of Rights. We've been traveling the state of California, having town meetings and talking to farmers and saying, what are your issues? And we're trying to find common ground between conventional farmers and organic farmers. And there are some common issues. Regulations, water being the two biggest, I think. Some of our successful programs in California include Grange Stock, which is our version of Woodstock, where we have a day-long music festival and a picnic atmosphere, and we have 8 or 10 bands come out. We ask them to play songs from the 60s and 70s. We have Joe Cocker and Janis Joplin imitation contests. We do trivia and all that stuff, and everybody's welcome to dress up in their love beads and their tie-dye shirts and all kinds of fun stuff like that. And would you believe some people said, we're not going to celebrate the hippies of the 60s? Well, okay, fine, stay home. Grange Relief Emergency Action Team, or our GREAT program, which is Grangers helping Grangers. The idea being if there's a disaster, we want to take care of our Grangers in that community. Celebrating cultural and social diversity. We started for the first time in California our first Latino Grange. We now have 4. Doesn't it make sense if your Grange Hall is in a Latino community that the membership would be Latino?
No.
Nah, it doesn't make any sense. The Grange Performing Arts Center. We took an old farmer's co-op store that we owned on our property, and we turned it into a performing arts center, and we have a theater group in there that just finished their first season. We have 8 smaller offices in the complex that have been rented out at extremely low rates to music conservatory, visual artists, poets, all kinds of arts groups which will work together to keep the Performing Arts Center going. Diversity in our Granges. I'll get in trouble for telling this story, but I'll tell it anyway. Our national master, Ed Luttrell, was really concerned because we were starting some Granges in California that were a bit off the charts, you know. We started the Southern California Southern California Certified Farmers Markets Managers Grange, which you can't say in one breath. Then we started the Sacramento Vegetarian Grange, and Ed called me and said, Bob, I've got to answer questions I'm getting about the Farmers Market Grange. What is that? Is it exclusive to farmers? No, anybody can join. Okay, well, what about this Sacramento Vegetarian Grange? Do they eat vegetables? Yes, they do. But, you know, if you don't eat vegetables, you're welcome to join. Okay, well, you know, understand, I get these questions, and I have to be able to, because we don't want to give the appearance that these are exclusive to a particular group of people. All right, then. Thanks, Bob. I said, wait a minute. You didn't ask me about the Healdsburg Ballet Grange, which we also started. There's nothing wrong with diversifying. If you look through the history of the Grange, theater groups always used Grange halls. Dances are in our blood. The Vegetarian Grange, by the way, we started that, and I was invited to their first meeting, which was on a Sunday, to speak, and I went to the meeting, and I stood up and I said, well, folks, this is a great dilemma for me today because this is Sunday and it's $1 cheeseburger day at McDonald's. Stopping the sale of Grange halls. That's on our program. Absolutely ridiculous. You are giving away our future. And if you sell a Grange hall or a Grange property, you will never be back in that community. Because these Grange halls were bought, and my home Grange was bought for, the land was bought for $50 back in the 30s. And the ladies paid the mortgage on the property by selling pies. And the members built the hall. And in most cases, the members built our Grange halls, sometimes with donated lumber and hardware. And we're going to turn around and sell that thing that's been in the family for you know, would you sell your grandfather? Some people would. The idea is these halls are our family. And you no more want to sell a Grange hall, we were talking about a sold Grange hall here, than you want to give away a member of your family. That's just absurd. That's just saying we're not going to grow. We're never going to have a membership in there. We can never fix it. Let's just give it to somebody else. There was a Grange down in Jan's area that sold, and there's a couple of them that sold down there, but this one, I was told it happened after I was in the leadership role, and I was told they could never get the members, so I went in there one day after it had become a dance studio, and I said, yeah, I understand we sold it because we couldn't get any members. He said, no, you couldn't get any members, really? I said, yeah. He says, we have 1,500 students. Why didn't we start the dance Grange there? Come on. Don't think outside of the box. Step on the box. Crush the box. Building bridges between our older and our younger Grangers. And that's what we talked about earlier on. We have some programs to do that in California. We call it, one of them is our Heritage Tour, where we dress up in period costumes from the 19th century and we reenact the formal opening of the Grange for new members and old members alike, because the old members will go in there and do it for them and they'll say, thank you. We haven't seen that for 20 years. And there's nothing wrong with our rituals. They're fun. And if you like history, how can you not like those things? We have another program called Reflections, where we ask 3 of our senior members, or maybe a couple of our members and one person from the community, to come to our hall. Then we go out to the local school and say, bring the kids in, because we have 3 members that want to share stories with these kids. And then we tell the 3 older members, we want you to share a 5 to 7 minute defining moment in your life to tell these kids. And they do that. The kids eat it up. They don't know what to do with themselves because they don't have a keyboard in front of them, and they see these things moving and sound coming out. And we tell them their lips, and that's called voice. It's a great program. And we're redefining our deputy and ambassador program. Deputies can, in some cases, get a bad reputation as being kind of law enforcement officers. And I don't know if we need that so much as we do help. Come and help us, you know. Shakespeare wrote that all the world is a stage and all the men and women are merely players, and they have their exits and their entrances. And one man in his time plays many parts. All the Grange is a stage, and all of our brothers and sisters are merely players with their exits and their entrances, and one man or woman in their time plays many parts. It's not so important that the part that we play, as long as we're in the cast. We've been given a white canvas. We've each been given a brush and an opportunity to paint anything in any way with any colors we want. We're only limited by the boundaries of our own imaginations. Becoming a Granger is not a right, it is a privilege, and membership carries with it certain responsibilities and expectations. A Granger is something one becomes. Let's respect our past, never fear our future, because the future belongs to us, and we can change the world one community at a time if we simply work together. Thank you.
Hear, hear.
So at this time, I just want to make our California Grange members available for questions and answers. You 2 guys want to come up, please? Maybe sit on the lip of the stage, and I'll just be the moderator and field questions. Jessica, come on up. And if you 3 would please just introduce yourselves. Microphone.
I'm Takashi Yogi. I became a Granger by accident in 1998. I happened to live next door to a Grange. It was about to be sold because of declining membership. It's probably a story you're all familiar with. They couldn't get enough for quorum, so they're going to sell it. I went over and looked at next door, and here was this building in pretty good shape, all paid for by the old members doing turkey dinners for ages. Mortgage completely paid off. I said, wow, this is a community resource. It's got to be preserved. So we got a bunch of 5 friends together, joined the Grange, formed the voting majority, and we became the first organic Grange in the U.S., as far as I know. And the way we grew our membership was by inviting all the organic organizations in Santa Cruz to join us. People like the UCSC Agroecology Program, Ecological Farming Association, Transition Santa Cruz, Certified Organic Farmers, Community Alliance for Family Farmers, etc. And these people used our hall for meetings and so forth, and we grew our membership rapidly. So this is a kind of a model for revitalizing Grangers. All you have to do is invite your community to join you. You don't have to, buttonhole people to join. They'll come willingly if you provide the umbrella for them to support their organizations. And this kind of story has been repeated all over California, as Bob mentioned. Springfield Grange was about to be sold. Through Bob's efforts, it's now a thriving Grange. San Luis Obispo, Aromas. And when I first joined the Grange, I was really reluctant to be involved with this organization. I read the Grange News, and I said, wow, I want no part of this organization. They stand for everything I'm against. But gradually, I started going to state conventions and so forth, and found there were a few other people that were dissatisfied with the direction of the Grange. And gradually, we got together. And surprisingly, within 10 years, we turned the battleship that Bob was talking about, turned it around. So you heard the list of all our resolutions, and we got some of those passed into law. So now I'm really proud of the Grange. I want to be part of it. I'm even part of the executive committee of the state Grange now, which was unimaginable when I first joined. So my message is, it's possible at the local level to change the Grange, and hopefully that will percolate upward. So hang in there.
Hi, I'm Jan Saxton, and I'm the president of the Aromas Community Grange. And what will happen if you stick with the Grange is the Grange will change you. And you will learn that there are issues that you share in common with people that you thought you never would. My first Grange convention, I found myself in a room full of over 200 people who were as absolutely passionate and outspoken as I was. And I thought, okay, we don't all agree, but we love to talk about our ideas and we love to share information. And I found that people who had different opinions than I did or different positions were very articulate and could tell me what they thought and why it was important to them, and then they were willing to listen to my point of view. They wanted to learn from my experience. And out of that, our resolutions become representative of the best of what we all bring to the process. And I have watched resolution process at our state Grange that just floored me. I'm head of the Environmental and Conservation Committee, and we brought a resolution, and I don't even remember what the topic was, but a woman stepped up to the microphone, and I just cringed. She and I are like as politically as far apart as you could possibly be. And I thought, oh, she's going to say something awful, And she said, I think we could make this a little more effective if we changed the wording just right here. And she was absolutely right. So miracles of communication and cooperation and mutual benefit happen in this organization, and they've been happening for 146 years, despite our, best efforts to shoot ourselves in the foot. I just am so excited about what the Grange can do, because it brings people together and it helps us to focus on those things on which we agree. And we all just decide to leave the stuff we don't agree on outside. We bring the stuff we do agree on into the center, and we work together. We work together on the things we agree on. So in Aromas, we've grown since our revitalization in 1999 by partnering with an art group, the Aromas Hills Artisans, which is a local guild, by being the only venue in town. We have a town of 3,000 people, and there's nothing else going on but the Grange. So we have movie nights, and we have pancake monthly breakfast, and we have, whenever there's a political issue, we have a town hall meeting, we have candidates and issues nights, we have movie nights. We do everything we can think of to attract our local community to come into the hall. Oh, and our favorite thing, twice a year, we have a live variety show on stage with the little 4-H Rosebud kids, Cloverbuds kids doing skits and Girl Scout skits and adult skits and music and juggling and magic and whatever the community brings. There's no rehearsal, there's no stage management. We just put together a lineup and say when the next person, when it's your turn to be ready. And that has brought people in and brought life to our Grange, brought us new members, and you'll find out there's an enormous amount of local talent in your little town if you just open the doors. So thank you for letting us come tonight.
I'm curious, you're in walking distance from San Juan Bautista.
Yeah, well, not quite walking.
Well,
I could ride a horse.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wondered if you included them in your, or do they have their own?
We have some fans in San Luis that come over
San
to our
Juan
San
Bautista,
Juan.
not
Sorry,
San
not San Luis. They have a new paper, San Juan Star, and so they write up our Aromas Grange events and stuff, and we do get some audience there. But and some from Santa Cruz and some from Monterey. We're doing more and more concerts and pulling in a wider audience. But yeah, we love the people in San Juan. They've got the only real grocery store for about 40 miles. So, Jessica?
Hi, good evening. I'm in the Sacramento Community Grange, and you may not know Prop 37 in California, where we believe we have a right to know what we eat, and we want labels on GMOs, started with a cow plop contest in the California Grange. So Pam Larry, a midwife in Chico, and a grandma, well, she entered her ticket in the cow plop, and there's this beautiful Guernsey cow out there with a grid, and wherever it plopped, that was the person that won. So she won $500, and that's how she did Prop 37. She went down and filed the initiative.
That was a smart cow.
So the Grange, we began with the Grange, and then, we lost by 1.4% on electronic ballots. And we did recounts of the hard copies, and those are in favor, but the electronic ones can't be recounted. So anyway, we had 6 million Californians who voted for labels, even with $47 million of opposition money against us. So that a lot of people were confused, and later on, when I talked to them, they'd go, "Oh my gosh, you mean, but I voted against that. I mean, I voted against GMOs, didn't I?" So they got really confused by the advertising. So I think it's amazing because 90% of people wanted labels, and we now know that there's a huge market for people that want to have to know what they're eating. So now that it's all over with, we want to fold that energy into the Grange. And so I'm in the Sacramento Community Grange. We're reviving a Grange that had only a few members, and with the energy of our label GMO. And it's the process of learning to work with the Grange. I went to the state convention in Willits, and I just never felt more at home. And Grangers are just real. They're so real. A lot of times on TV and out in the public, you see people that have made nothing wrong with makeup, but they're not being who they are. And maybe because their job's acquired or whatever. But Grangers, you just look who you are, and you're real. And I love that. And down home and a connection to the earth and the soil. And my family's, comes from 1,000 generations of farmers. I've had 5 acres all my life. And I'm a biodynamic gardener, so it's really important to me. And so now that we're in this, one thing I wanted to leave with people was what a difference you can make. So how can you make a difference out of what I'm saying to you? And I think one thing you can do is connecting through sites and social media, which we've been doing. For instance, something called MAAM, Mothers Across America March. And so 4th of July, we're going to sign up and parades all over across the United States in March for labels on GMOs. We have 150 cities already. And you can just go to the Facebook page and look that up. Zen Honeycutt, a mother down in LA, is organizing that. It's just her idea. And so, whatever ideas people come up with, they can if you go to GMO Free USA. GMO Free USA is done by Diana Reeves. She had a child who died of cancer, and she made good healthy foods her mission in life. And every day, she's got a boycott, especially Kellogg's, who spent $1.6 million to keep us from knowing what we're eating. And we tell them that on their pages every day. So it's really embarrassing, but I think it needs to not go away. And yesterday, House of Representatives Bill 933, Section 753 passed, and is now going to be signed by the President with the Monsanto Protection Act in it. And so, what can we do? We can petition the President, but also we can go to the Facebook pages and the sites of whoever voted for that. And from now until they're out of office, post every single day, just like we're doing with Kellogg's. We have the power of us, and we have the power of the voting with the dollar every single time we go to the store, not to vote for those people who would keep us from knowing what we're eating. And so if you see that non-GMO seal on there, if you see organic, then you know that they're not using these chemicals, and they're not using genetically engineered, so I'm a science teacher, they're not using genetically engineered organisms. And so GMO Free USA, MAAM, those are two sites. California is working now through the Label GMOs website. It was the one through the campaign. And we have a Facebook, Label GMOs too. You can see what postings we're doing. Any of you could post on it. It's the beauty of Facebook, and tell us what's going on. We're learning from Oregon's efforts, because you had your effort to label, and then that was defeated. And then this last year you were defeated by the Oregonians for food and shelter. I can't believe the spin they put on everything. So we're learning from you too, and that's one reason I'm up here, to hear what is going on with you. Thanks.
We'll take a couple of questions. I do want to draw your attention to the fact that we did bring some goodies with us. Those folders over there, you're welcome to take one. It's just sort of a collage of things we've worked on in California. We are having a Renaissance Summit, we're calling it, in South Lake Tahoe this summer, starting June 24th. It's a beautiful camp on the shores of Tahoe. It's a 4-H camp that we're allowed to use, 33 acres amongst the tall trees. We have a private beach, canoes, kayaks, 4 nights, and all of your food, all of your meals, $150.
And you're invited.
And you're invited, and we're going to have workshops, things like that. We're going to take some questions, but first I want to thank Jeannie and Malcolm and Cookie for having us here. We're looking forward to the rest of the weekend, and the food tonight was fabulous, and listening to Kari was fabulous. Thank you so much for inviting us. Are there any questions for this panel?
How many lobbyists for the Grange are there in California?
2. Mike Green is our professional lobbyist, paid for by...
Is he full-time again?
Well, I don't know if you could call him full-time on Grange wages,
Yeah, right.
But,
I think he works full-time and gets paid half.
We have a budget, and that's his budget. And then I'm also a lobbyist for the California State Grange.
And so how would you get chosen as a...
How would you be chosen? Well,
lobbyist?
Mike's, that's his profession. And just by the fact that I'm the president of the California State Grange, all the presidents traditionally have signed up as lobbyists. I don't do a lot of lobbying. It's so easy for me. They come up with a script. They ask me to go to one of the chamber meetings over there, and I just read from the script and give my testimony, and I'm the big hero when they've done all the work. I feel so guilty, but boy, is it fun. Other questions?
What's your home Grange?
My home Grange is the Pleasant Valley Grange, which is outside of Placerville in the gold country of California. I got involved in the Grange really quickly. We had a water issue, 10 years ago, we had this water issue. The irrigation district of El Dorado County was going to shut down the water in our natural creek. And myself and the neighbors who own property there said, they can't do that, that'd be terrible. So the only organization in the area was the Grange. So we went into the Grange, we asked for their help, they helped us, and we defeated the irrigation district and saved the creek.
And joined the Grange.
And joined the Grange. Well, I got shanghaied, like most people. Other questions?
Doesn't matter why you join, just join.
Just join.
You'll figure out why
All
later.
right.
I have a question. So I love your agenda. You can sign me up. I don't know which Granger you're going to join, but your political agenda is really great. Wondering how you develop that? Like, how do you prioritize it? How do you figure out what you're going to work on? You have a lot of issues there.
We are a grassroots organization, so as you heard Takashi talk about, our direction comes from our grassroots members. A resolution is developed at the community Grange level. It goes to our state Grange convention once a year. If the delegates pass it there, what was the resolution that you were talking about, Jan?
I
Can't recall
remember what it was.
Energy and conservation. Or if it's passed at the state Grange convention, then it gets into our list, and Mike Green and I go over these lists, and largely based on his professional opinion, we select resolutions, we prioritize them and select ones that we think we have the best chance of getting to pass. Because normally we'll have 20, 25 resolutions that have passed at our convention. We can't always work on all of them. Like the one year was the right to hang clothes in your backyard to dry. And when Takashi was talking about the newspapers and how the newspaper, our headlines in the newspaper, I saw one the other day, it was, Grange passes resolution to make motorcycle lane changes illegal.
Yeah, some of them end up being kind of local issues. So, his job is to go, all right, is this a state issue? Is this something we could actually take to our state legislature and make an active...
And they can also make them national in scope, which means they then go back to the National Grange Convention for consideration.
If they pass at the state.
If they pass at the state.
And we have been effective at the California level. For instance, one of our resolutions was the cottage food bill. And that got formed into Assembly Bill 1616, which was recently passed into law. And it's now in effect, largely through Grange efforts.
Yeah. We've had the industrial hemp bill on Governor Schwarzenegger's desk and Governor Brown's desk, and they both vetoed it. And we actually did it 3 other times. This will be our 3rd time out on that one. Yes?
When you consider a state issue, do you also think out how it fits into the national scheme? For instance, if you had passed, if that GMO bill, which I personally would favor, passed in California, I could foresee that it would be challenged in court under the concept that the federal law preempts in that area.
Yeah, probably could be.
Right.
In a case like that, we would still work for it because it's what we want in California, even if there was a federal suit against it or something. I can see one of the big organizers that put up that $46 million coming at us for that. Other questions?
Wait, I want to tag on to that. And what that means is our legislative agenda in the Grange represents what our members send. He doesn't go, well, there's no point in doing that because even if we got the legislation passed, national federal law would trump it. It doesn't matter. The grassroots said, we care about this. We want to work on this. So they take it and run with it. And that's important.
Yeah.
Yep.
Bob, isn't Unique Phillips a lobbyist for us?
No.
So she's just working on...
She's an advocate.
Oh, she's an advocate. Oh, she's also someone really powerful. Like we're having a lot of suicides among the dairy farmers in California because they were charging them 4 times a month, $400 lab test underneath the groundwater, even if they pastured their cows. They're not CAFO feeding operations. There was a $270,000 fine if they didn't pay it. So she walks a dairy farmer over into the Capitol, who is in tears, and talked to the legislature. And so she So she's just, we have, I guess, people working as advocates also that
Yes.
are not,
Any
a lot of,
citizen could be an advocate.
yeah, she's making a huge difference.
I'd like to say we have 9,200 advocates.
9,200 hours,
Yeah.
yeah.
Other questions? All right.
I'm pretty new to the Grange, but I have heard people sing the praises of the organizational rule structure, like when there are meetings, that really does, I mean, it's somewhat cumbersome to people who are not used to any rules, but that it does help run a meeting so that you can actually get something done. That it works better than consensus as far as being able to move forward. Would you say that's a fair?
Well, I'm not quite sure I understand your question, but consensus would be where you're not taking a vote and whoever's chairing the meeting says, I believe we have consensus, and we do those kinds of things. Sometimes it's just obvious. But anytime a vote is called, you have to take a vote. And the Grange is a grassroots democratic organization where every member has an equal voice and one vote and majority rules. But there are various ways to run a meeting. The Grange manual has a script that you can follow, an agenda that you can follow, which works pretty well for running a meeting. And then we talked about rituals earlier. There are various ways people open their meetings. A lot of Granges will be pretty casual about it, and they'll just have like a round table meeting. And in this day and age when we might have families where two parents are working and the kids are in soccer and they got, school night and all that stuff, I understand that. But my encouragement is that we don't completely let go of our rituals and our formal meetings and how we open them and so forth, because if we forget how these things are happening, who's going to pass it on to the next generation of Grangers? And this is our heritage, this is our history. It's like throwing away the family photo album. I don't think we should do that. Other questions? Yes?
You were talking about history of the Grange, and I was talking to someone up in Corvallis who had mentioned that the Grange played a bit of a role in the suffrage movement. I was curious if you had any comments on that? Or?
Well, yes, because the Grange was the first national organization to recognize women and give them an equal voice, we carried on that tradition all the way through the suffrage period. And Susan B. Anthony's last public address, I'm told, was at a National Grange Convention. So we are, I don't recall the name, but one of the daughters of the founders of the Grange was very much in favor of women's rights way back in 1870 and was well known, and there's a lot of history on that. Not enough is written about that. Dan, you got to write a book. Women of the Grange, Women of the Grange. Other questions?
There is a book, Women in the Grange, isn't it?
Is there?
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
The Women in the Grange, there is a book. There is.
The thing with the Granger was since day one almost.
I know, but
It's a niece of the founder.
yeah,
Was the one that basically demanded from Diana, that's it. We
right.
should have women.
Caroline?
Yeah, that's the gal that picked it up, yeah. It's remarkable history. But even so, I mean, you got to think back at these times. When you were the Grange going into a community and trying to start a Grange, and you're talking to this community in 1870, oh yeah, we can have women officers. Oliver Hudson Kelly, the founder of the Grange, got a lot of flack for that when he would go to communities and suggest that, and people would just, I'm sure the wives would turn away and the men would say, you can't do that. And I'm told that the only way he got their attention was he was a Mason, and he wore a Mason's pin. And when they saw he was a Mason, then they listened to him. So.
And there were fewer men after the Civil War,
Yes,
too.
there were.
I mean, women had a lot of important roles at that time out of necessity.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying this in any bigoted way,
No,
but
no, I'm just-
with the history,
Yeah,
I find it
I'm
interesting
thinking
that
of
the
that.
same time Congress was
Yeah.
allowing black slaves to vote, women had not been given the vote yet.
Right.
And can you imagine
And
what
didn't
some of
get
those...
it for a long time after.
Well, could you imagine what some of those Southern women thought about that? I mean, what, come on, give everybody a vote. You can have my vote. Other questions? All right. Well, Well, thanks, folks. Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you, Bob. Wow, what a diversity of Grange experience in this room. It's really, really different. Listening to the stories from California is, I don't know, looking at that small Oregon contingent over there, actually half the group anyway, it's a different experience up here, and it's really fun to hear these stories from down south there, and it makes me just wish I were in maybe this is what happens in a National Grange Convention, being somewhere where you hear, oh, what's Grange like in Florida? Well, oh, what's it like there? And hear all the different stories that come about. Because now I'm starting to see there's quite an interpretation, and rightly so, because there's so many different kinds of communities and so many kinds of cultures that it is going to be like that. The way schools are different places, and the way churches are different places, and people worship differently. And it's wonderful. I feel so rich for the experience of hearing your stories. So thank you so much. And thank you, Carrie, for your bringing it to us about the Farm Bill. And tomorrow we've got a work session. Tomorrow, after a good night's sleep, I hope, we're going to put our heads together and work together to think about what is it that we want for our, and I'm almost wondering if the California Granges might even be thinking, have different issues. And part of it is that Oregon has certain new agricultural challenges that a lot of us are aware of, that we're working on. And I don't know, but we'll all put our heads together and we'll come with our own agendas and see what we have in common with others, and see how we can make the world a better place starting tomorrow. So breakfast is at, what did I say, 8, right? Yeah, 8 o'clock, and farm fresh everything. And 9 o'clock we'll start a resolution writing session up here, and we'll have plenty of time to share what we've written, and lunch on your own. I think you have information on that part, right? And if not, I'll bring some those lists, those lunch lists again. And I did get a little flack from the community. I put some information out. I took the lunch list from the Locally Grown magazine that's there, recommendations. And it's true, there are so many more restaurants that are so good that didn't make it on that list because they didn't pay for the advertising. So, I just didn't have time to research all the great restaurants out there. I felt really bad, and which they asked me, would you at least make a plug for the Pizza Research Institute? And I can't. It really is good. It's not less.
They weren't in there.
No, they weren't in there because they weren't interested in paying for an ad in it. So, yeah, the Pizza Research Institute is another wonderful place to be. Anyway, all of you, I hope you have a wonderful night's rest, and we'll see you in the morning.